Trooper A1 The Purple Blitzkrieg by Gabrielle Marie Kozak. Book 1 of the Trooper series. Narrated by the author. Chapter 5. Maura and Connor went with their mother the next day to drop their father off at the airport. Mr. Adrian White worked in a government office in Washington, and he was very rarely home. So they bid him a hearty farewell, expressing sincere hopes that they would see him again soon. Then came the drive home, marked by silence from Connor, who was carsick, and scattered talking between Maura and her mother. Maura was in the passenger seat, getting a driving lesson. Connor huddled in the middle of the back row of the gray five-seater, keeping his gaze far away from the windows and staring at the floor of the van, with his hands over his ears in a half-hearted, unsuccessful attempt to block out their voices. "There's a train track. Why do train tracks still exist?" Maura asked her mother, leaning forward in her seat. "Aren't they obsolete?" "Well, people still travel by train," Mrs. White pointed out, keeping her eyes on the road, "and they're good for transporting livestock and other things." There was a jolt, and Connor bounced up into the air, narrowly missed bumping his head on the top of the car, and landed hard on the seat. He mumbled something and pulled his hood back over his face again. Maura heard him mumbling and twisted around in her seat. "What's up? Need a paper bag?" Her eyes twinkled. "I will if you don't leave me alone," Connor muttered, glaring at the floor. It was slightly messy as his mother took it to work every day. There was some mail that had probably been in there for months, as well as a box of tissues. "I think there's one in the glove compartment," Maura continued, opening it up. "Let me see." "Mom," Connor protested, "I'm not going to be sick." "Maura, you'd better leave it alone or you'll spill everything out," Mrs. White advised quickly, glancing at her daughter out of the corner of her eye. Grinning, Maura pushed the compartment shut and sat back. Relieved, Connor pulled his hood down again and pretended to go to sleep. "Why are you always wearing a hoodie?" Maura was looking back at him again. "It's my style," Connor retorted with his eyes shut tight. "Like you with your fingerless gloves." "Fingerless gloves are cool. Mom, can I have my phone back, please?" Maura asked, suddenly thinking of something she could do to pass the time. They had half an hour left before they reached home. "It's in my purse," Mrs. White told her, "but you should watch the road so that you'll get more driving experience." "All right," Maura conceded. Connor laughed from the back seat. "Yeah, you'd better be extra careful because the eldest is more likely to crash than younger siblings," he grinned. "But I'm not the Maura began, but something cut her off. Mrs. White tensed and Connor's face whitened. "I'm not gonna crash," Maura said finally, her voice much quieter. The next day at school, on Monday, everything went well for the twins. There wasn't volleyball that day, so they went home together. Maura went to her room to change, but Connor was still wearing his PE clothes because Monday was the boys' PE day. In the living room, he took off his hoodie and pulled his school laptop out of his backpack, working with it on his laptop. He had finished the first math problem when Maura came out of her room wearing her backpack and holding her phone. Connor looked up. "Mom texted," his twin reported, reading off her phone. "She's going to work late, so we can either make dinner ourselves or order a pizza." She looked up. "So you pick, pizza or spaghetti?" "We went to an Italian restaurant just last night," Connor protested. "Can't we make something else?" "I guess," Maura sighed. "What then?" "Let's have breakfast for dinner," Connor suggested. "I'll help you make French toast, and we can have scrambled eggs and bacon." "Sounds great," Maura couldn't help but grin. The twins finished their homework, played a board game, and finally got around to making their dinner around 5:30. Connor felt faint working over the hot stove and opted to walk to the store and get ice cream for after dinner. Maura approved of that idea, and Connor went to his room to grab his phone. "I'm going to take the long way," he warned Maura as he stuffed his feet into his sneakers and put them up one at a time on the chair to tie them. "Call me if we need anything else." "The pantry's stocked," Maura shrugged. "But you could text Mom and ask." "I'll do that," her brother agreed, tying the last knot. He whistled the first few notes of his favorite patriotic song, "Maryland, My Maryland," as he stepped out the door onto the front porch, typed a short message to his mother, and marched down the street. The days were already getting shorter for the winter that would be there within a few months, and a few autumn-colored leaves blew down the street when the wind picked up. The sky was bright and clear, a relief after the giant storm from a few days before. There was the ordinary crowd using the sidewalks, the even more ordinary road traffic. An old homeless man sat at the edge of the road, waving a sign made from trashed cardboard, "Help, please." Connor watched him for a few seconds. He could get something extra at the store with his pocket money for the man and give it to him on the way back. With that thought in mind, he waited for the light to change, then crossed the street, making it across just before the light changed again. He stopped. He stopped. Someone in the small crowd that was jostling around him had caught his eye. The man was probably in his mid-40s, tall, stocky, and with a hard-set face. But what really attracted Connor's attention were the clothes he wore. They were of the same hue of the clothes of the bank robbers 3 years before, and the same style as well, though the man did not wear a mask. Nevertheless, Connor was greatly suspicious. He hadn't seen anyone dressed like that since. His thin face turned white, and he stared, oblivious of the people around him, his dark eyes following the man to the door of a small gun shop. Momentarily forgetting about ice cream, Connor walked quickly the distance between himself and the gun shop, stopping only at the glass door. There he stopped and peered in through the glass. He stepped back in surprise. It seemed no one was inside. The lights were off. Connor blinked and looked again. Nothing changed. But he had seen the man go in there. That Connor knew for certain. And he saw no other door, remarkably unusual for a store now that he thought about it. Without stopping to consider, he gently pushed the shop door open. For some reason, the bell did not ring. Connor stepped inside the shop, softly guided the door shut, and examined the bell. It should have rung. He had no idea why it hadn't, but he was glad.